In the year 1986, a woman named Vivian won $4.3 million in the New Jersey lottery. She quit her job. She bought a house. She gave money to everyone who asked. 7 years later, she was broke, in debt, and working as a cashier at the same supermarket she had won the ticket from. And here is the part nobody talks about. In interviews, she said the years after winning felt more stressful than any years before it. She said she almost missed being poor. She didn't understand why. But neuroscience does. Your brain does not want you to be rich. Not because it is lazy. Not because it is stupid. But because somewhere deep inside the oldest part of your mind, wealth feels dangerous. Change feels dangerous. And your brain will do almost anything to protect you from danger, even when the danger is actually opportunity. This is the story of why your brain thinks being broke is safe. And once you understand it, you will never look at your own financial habits the same way again. Start here. Your brain has two operating systems running at the same time. The first one is the prefrontal cortex. This is the part that reads books about investing, makes budgets, sets goals, and knows logically that saving money is a good idea. It is rational, slow, and deliberate. It is also exhausting to run. The second operating system is the limbic system. This is ancient. This is the part that kept your ancestors alive for 200,000 years before the concept of a savings account existed. It runs on emotion, instinct, and pattern recognition. And it is fast. Shockingly fast. When these two systems disagree, the limbic system almost always wins. Not because you are weak. Because it is older, faster, and operates below the level of conscious thought. You never get to vote on its decisions. You only discover them afterward, when you are standing in a store holding something you did not mean to buy, or lying awake wondering why you never followed through on the financial plan you were so excited about 3 weeks ago. Here is what the limbic system learned from 200,000 years of human history. Resources are scarce. The future is unpredictable. The known, even when it is bad, is safer than the unknown. Your ancestors who stayed close to the familiar survived longer than the ones who took wild risks and chased uncertain rewards. The cautious ones passed on their genes. You are descended from the cautious ones. So when your brain sees an opportunity, a new investment, a business idea, a decision to finally start saving seriously, it does not evaluate it the way a spreadsheet does. It runs it through a different filter. Is this familiar? Is this what the people around me do? Is this what I have always done? If the answer is no, the limbic system quietly raises an alarm. Not loud enough for you to notice, just loud enough to make you feel slightly uneasy, slightly not ready, slightly like you should wait until next month. That feeling has a name. Psychologist Martin Seligman spent decades studying what he called learned helplessness. He found that when living things are repeatedly exposed to situations where their actions have no effect on the outcome, they eventually stop trying. Even when the situation changes. Even when action would now work. The nervous system learns helplessness as a default state, and it holds onto that lesson long after the lesson stops being useful. This is what happens to people who grow up around financial scarcity. It is not that they don't want more. Every survey ever conducted on poverty shows that people in financial stress think about money more, not less. The problem is the limbic system has learned a very specific lesson from years of evidence. Effort does not reliably produce results, so it protects you by reducing effort. Not consciously, not intentionally, just quietly, reliably, persistently pulling you back toward the state it knows. The state that feels on a biological level like home. Now here is where it gets genuinely strange. This mechanism does not just affect people who grew up poor. It affects anyone who carries a learned identity around money. If you grew up in a household where money was tight and people who had money were talked about with suspicion or resentment, your limbic system filed that information away. Rich people are not like us. Money changes people. Having too much makes you a target. And now, decades later, every time you get close to a level of financial success that breaks outside that identity, the alarm goes off. You make a bad investment. You quit too early. You spend the savings on something that feels justified in the moment. The limbic system is not sabotaging you. It is protecting the version of you it knows how to keep alive. This is the neuroscience behind what psychologists call a financial thermostat. Just like a physical thermostat, your nervous system has a set point, a temperature it considers normal. When things get too cold, meaning your finances drop below what feels survivable, stress kicks in and motivates action. But when things get too warm, when income or savings push significantly above the set point, a different kind of discomfort arrives, and the system quietly turns on the cooling. A bad decision here, an unnecessary expense there, a hesitation at exactly the wrong moment. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist who has studied money disorders for over 20 years, calls these patterns money scripts. Unconscious beliefs about money inherited from your environment before you were old enough to evaluate them. And his research found something remarkable. The scripts are not random. They cluster into predictable categories: money avoidance, money worship, money status, money vigilance. And each category produces a specific, predictable set of financial behaviors in adulthood, none of which the person is consciously choosing. Think about the last time you had a genuine financial opportunity in front of you. Not a scam. A real, legitimate chance to do something different with money. What happened in your body? Most people, if they are honest, feel a tightening, a reason to wait, a sudden awareness of all the ways it could go wrong. That is not rational analysis. That is the limbic system pulling the handbrake. It has run a pattern match against everything it knows about your financial history and decided that moving forward feels too unfamiliar to be safe. Here is the most important thing to understand. The brain does not distinguish between emotional safety and financial safety. When being broke has been your baseline for long enough, broke feels safe. Not good, not comfortable, but known. And known is the closest thing to safe the limbic system understands. This is why lottery winners go broke. This is why people who get raises often find their expenses rising to match within months. This is why people who escape financial difficulty through hard work and discipline sometimes, without understanding why, make a decision that sends them back. Not stupidity, not weakness, a nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. So what do you actually do about it? Willpower does not work here. You cannot muscle past a pattern that runs below conscious thought. Budgeting apps do not work in isolation either, because the problem is not information. You already know you should save money. You already know impulse purchases are bad. Knowledge has never been the gap. What works, according to Klontz's research and decades of behavioral economics, is identity change before behavior change. The sequence most people try is change the behavior, which will change the results, which will change how I see myself. The sequence that actually works is the opposite. Change how you see yourself and the behaviors follow. Not immediately, not without friction. But the friction is different when you are moving toward an identity rather than fighting against one. This means one specific thing practically. Before you change a single financial habit, ask yourself a single question. What would someone have to believe about money, about themselves, and about their future to naturally make this decision? And then spend time, not money, not effort, just time, sitting with that belief until it feels less foreign. Because here is the truth your brain has been hiding from you. Being broke is not safe. It only feels safe because it is familiar. And familiar is not the same as safe. It never was. Your ancestors who only chose the familiar path did survive longer in a world where the unknown meant predators and starvation. But you do not live in that world. You live in a world where the unknown sometimes means a savings account, a better decision, a different outcome. The alarm your brain keeps pulling, it was built for a world that no longer exists. And once you hear it for what it actually is, not a warning about real danger, but an echo from an ancient nervous system doing its ancient job, you get to decide for the first time whether to listen to it. Vivian, the lottery winner, eventually figured this out. Not in the way you might expect. Not by becoming rich again, but by understanding that the stress she felt after winning was not about the money. It was about identity. She had spent 40 years knowing exactly who she was in relation to money. Winning did not change that knowledge. It just made the gap between the identity and the reality too wide to ignore. Your gap might not be that dramatic, but it is there. And now you know what it is made of. The question is what you do next. The next time you feel that quiet pull backward, that subtle not yet, that comfortable return to what you know, recognize it for exactly what it is. 200,000 years of evolutionary caution meeting a 21st century bank account. Your ancestors needed that caution to survive. You need something different now. You need to be just uncomfortable enough, just long enough, to let your nervous system learn a new kind of safe. One that looks less like familiarity and more like the future you keep planning and never quite reaching. That future is not blocked by your circumstances. It never was. It was always blocked by a thermostat set too low by a world that no longer exists. And thermostats can be reset.